Good afternoon, colleagues. Please remain standing whilst my chaplain, Reverend David Gerard, leads the council in prayer.
Let us pray. Lord, we thank you for all your gifts, for everything you give us. And Lord, help us to be good stewards. Help us to put the common good of all at the forefront of our minds as we manage what you give us. We pray for this world, for those who are forgotten, for those who are caught up in war, for those who are neglected by the rich West. We pray for our nation, for all those who govern, for all members of Parliament, and for all those in whatever kind of power. We pray, Lord, that they would put the good of all at the front of their thoughts and their actions. We pray that people would come together to work for the good of those who need it. And Lord, today we pray particularly for the city of Wakefield and the Metropolitan District, for all those who live there. We pray that you would help the work of this chamber to benefit each individual, that the work of each council member would be motivated by a desire to serve those for whom they have been elected. And Lord, we pray for a flourishing of the common good together. Bless this time. In the name of Jesus Christ our Lord. Amen.
Thank you. Please be seated. Item 2 on the council summons is to receive disclosures by members of interest in matters under consideration. Will members declaring an interest please identify themselves and their particular interest clearly and complete the usual yellow form before the end of the meeting.
Agenda 9, my son has been one of the members on the remuneration panel. And I will also close that part.
Thank you, Councillor. Firstly, colleagues, are there any particular disclosable pecuniary interests to be declared? Are there any interests to be declared? Thank you. Agenda item 3 is to receive and confirm the minutes of the council meeting held on the 20th of June 2018. Are these minutes moved? Thank you. Are the minutes seconded?
Second the minutes, Mr. Mayor.
All in favour? That is carried. Agenda item 4 is to receive apologies for absence. Apologies for absence have been received in advance of the meeting from Councillors Mrs Heckinstall, Mrs Scott, Dagger, Miss Williams, Mrs Kitchen, Mrs Collins and Alan Garbett.
I have an apology from Councillor Gillian Cruz, who has got a health problem but was coming to the council meeting but was then involved in a car crash. She's not seriously hurt from the crash, but it has upset her, so she tenders her apologies to this meeting. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Hallwell.
I have also been notified that Councillor Miss Stansby needs to leave the meeting at 3:30 p.m.
If there are any further apologies, would you please identify the members concerned clearly, one after the other? Thank you, Councillor Cummins. Agenda item 5 is to deal with such announcements as I may decide to lay before Council. I would like to start my announcements by welcoming apprentices from across the Council to this meeting. I hope you have all had an interesting day. On the 13th of July, I held a civic welcome for Wakefield gymnasts in recognition of their success and achievements. On the 17th of July, I hosted a reception for Commodore Philip Waterhouse, Naval Regional Commander of Northern England and the Isle of Man, to the parlour. We had an interesting discussion about our naval connections. The Yorkshire Regiment exercised their right to parade through our city on Saturday the 21st of July for the first time since receiving honorary freedom of the city in 2010. They were led by a marching band. The parade was a great opportunity to celebrate our servicemen and women and to remember those who have been injured or paid the ultimate sacrifice in the line of duty. It was a very enjoyable event. I am pleased to announce that the Rifles Regiment will also be exercising their right to parade through the city on Saturday the 15th of September as part of their Freedom of the City. I hope as many of you as possible can join me. I am really looking forward to attending the Yorkshire Day celebrations in Ripon on the 1st of August. And finally, colleagues, I would like to welcome Mr. Ian Brown, the Independent Remuneration Panel Chairman, who is here to present his annual report to Council in accordance with Council Procedure Rule 19.14. I wish to formally propose the following motion without notice to enable Mr. Brown to address the Council. That in accordance with Council Procedure Rule 19.14, Mr. Brown will be permitted to make any representations before Council to the extent that he felt necessary when presenting the Independent Remuneration Panel's report. Agenda item 9 on the Council's summons. Is the motion seconded? All in favour? That is carried. I propose to take the annual report of the Independent Remuneration Panel immediately following my announcements and not in the order it appears on the Council summons. However, before we move on, as you are all aware, there is a very special lady sitting to my left who will be retiring from the Council at the end of August. She knows nothing of this announcement or the opportunity it has given me to embarrass her. Every single one of us have valued your expertise and guidance over the years, and as a small token of our gratitude, I would like to present you with something on behalf of the Council. Thank you, colleagues, and that concludes my announcements. Agenda item 9 is to consider a report of the Independent Remuneration Panel on members' allowances.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Is my voice not strong enough?
That one.
Is it on?
Yes.
Firstly, can I add my thanks to Bernadette for all the work she's done with us over the last 8 or 9 years to help the panel work hard, come to the right decisions and guide us down the correct path, making sure we do things in the proper way. Thank you, Bernadette. I want to present the report of the work that we've done this year. When we've worked in accordance with local government law. Our panel is made up of local people with specific expertise in certain things such as role profile, I'm an HR manager, and we try to work in a constructive, collaborative way. Our panel fairly, I believe, represents the district, and we have the benefit of understanding any fears there are about how the panel operates. I'd like to further thank the officers who have helped us besides Bernadette. We've had 3 people who help us and really do all the legwork for us to consider the things they find. When we look at the remuneration of councillors and people with special responsibilities, we take into account the work you do, the hours you put in, the responsibilities and the skills you have. So we believe that's the right way. And it's very much in accordance with how other panels across West Yorkshire operate. I have the benefit of working on the Kirklees panel, and many of the ways we operate in here have been lifted and taken to Kirklees, so something of a leading group. I want to now come to the recommendations that the panel have come to this year, and there are a couple of important changes. We looked at the overview and scrutiny committees, and we decided that there should be some equity in there, so we've made a change in the deputy chair role. The other part that we've looked at very closely is the chair of the New Children's Parenting Committee, and we believe that that chair should receive the same allowance as the Overview and Scrutiny Committee chairs. We have the benefit of having a family lawyer on our panel and a family judge, and both fully understand the work that post will be required to do over some difficult times over the next 2 or 3 years. And in general, what we want to do also is continue with our policy of treating councillors in the same way as council employees in terms of what you might call the inflation rise that is awarded on councillors' allowances. So our recommendation is that follows the national awards that are made every year. We'll continue to look at the scheme in future, and when things are brought to us that look out of line or don't match with other authorities for whatever reason, we'll look at those, decide whether any changes are needed, and we'll report back. So what I would ask you to do is, we'll make these recommendations. If you're happy with our recommendations, we'd ask you to sanction the changes that we've recommended. I don't want to say any more, so if anybody's any questions that they want to ask me about the work we do or the conclusion we do, please feel free to do so. No? Okay. Thank you very much for your time, and I wish you well in your work over the next couple of hours. And thank you again. Thank you.
Thank you. Is that report officially moved and seconded? Is the report seconded? Thank you. Council is asked to approve the recommendations as set out on agenda page 53. All those in favour? Any against? Any abstentions? That is carried. As no deputations have been received for today's meeting, we will now move to agenda item 7, which is the Leader's Report. Once the Leader has presented his report, he will answer any questions from members on the matters raised in his report. A maximum of 30 minutes will be allowed for questions and answers. Councillor Box.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Can I join in your comments to Bernadette and just say that I personally have found her unfailingly helpful to me, and just to thank her for all the advice that she's given, not just me personally, but to every member of council. I have to say, you can't say this about everybody, certainly not me, but she's universally liked and respected. So wish you all the best in the future, Bernadette. Bernadette, just in case you didn't know, has in the past worked for Eric Pickles, Now she's working for me, so you can see that she had a broad spectrum of experience in local government. So we do wish you all the best.
Thank you.
Colleagues, on a serious note, you will be aware that in earlier this year we had our targeted inspection from Ofsted. That targeted inspection was very critical of the local authority. We had hoped that from that inspection there would be sufficient time for the changes that we had planned through both the managerial and political leadership to make some of those changes that we know are needed. That was not to be because Ofsted come in and carried out an inspection, and the result of that is their judgment is that we are inadequate. My view is, and I've said this publicly, that is not acceptable. However, I've met along with the Chief Executive and with Beate, and in fact with Councillor Isherwood, with representatives from the Department for Education. We have assured them that we will work with them to make sure that the required changes are made, and they will be made. I've also assured them, and I've told them, that Councillor Ahmed at the last meeting, following the targeted inspection, has offered his support, bearing in mind his experience of working for Ofsted, and that is greatly appreciated, Councillor Ahmed. I know there's been a briefing today for all elected members by Beate. Hopefully, all the questions that members had will have been raised. Any particular questions in terms of the future, Margaret Isherwood will deal with it in her report to Council. But just to repeat, this is a very poor report. But we have given a commitment to the DFE, and we make a commitment publicly that we don't just seek to get a little bit better, we seek to move towards a good judgment, and that is our aim. I told the DFE that we would not be able to, and they understand and accept this, to give a target date. What we don't want to do, any of us, in our respective roles, is to give a target date that is unattainable. So we will be looking at making sure that in a very, very reasonable timescale, we move towards that particular category. On the 12th of July, colleagues, there was a meeting of the Yorkshire Leaders Board, which I attended. Prior to that, a letter had been circulated to all leaders from the Secretary of State. I'm more than happy, Mr. Mayor, to make that letter available to all members. And you can see from the letter, the Secretary of State has made it quite clear that the government will not talk about a wider devolution deal until the Sheffield City Region deal has been fully implemented. Absolutely quite clear in that letter. The Yorkshire Leaders Group agreed that we would write to the Secretary of State and say that we still felt that the majority of people supported the wider geography and really asking him to reconsider. My concern is this. We've got to make sure, bearing in mind the financial constraints under which we are working, and bearing in mind the issue I'm going to raise next, which is Brexit, we've got to make sure that we don't bang our heads against a brick wall forever. So, I've spoken to colleagues in Hull City Council who've recently had a meeting with the Northern Powerhouse Minister, Jake Berry, and they've given to him a city deal for Hull. I've asked officer colleagues to start working up a city deal for Wakefield. That, I believe, should be unique to Wakefield and would focus on robotics, because as we all know from the Centre for Cities report, that poses a particular problem for Wakefield. So, that is in the process of being done. That will be available early in September, following which I shall arrange to have a meeting as quickly as possible with Jake Berry. Can I say, that's not to say that we will not continue to work with colleagues across the region in terms of that wider deal. But we've got to make sure that if the Secretary of State confirms what he's said in his letter to us in the last few days, that we stand ready to put something alternative in its place. So that's where we are on that. And finally, colleagues, there is now an EU exit delivery board has been set up between the LGA and the government. I've been asked to serve on behalf of the LGA on that board as chair of the Key Cities Group. Our first meeting with the Secretary of State, James Brokenshire, took place on the 19th of July, and it was a very positive meeting. I cannot, because it was agreed that those discussions were under Chatham House rules, but suffice to say that the LGA did comment on the Chequers agreement, but in particular, and this is something that clearly isn't a secret, we raised our concerns about the proposed UK Prosperity Fund. We know that if we don't get the funding that is presently available through the EU, then we need to make sure that that UK Prosperity Fund is fully funded and that none of us, actually whatever political persuasion in local government, lose out. And finally, on that particular point, to say that, as colleagues will be aware, we have earmarked some reserves in terms of the implications of Brexit. We will continue now picking up the pace on what it might mean for Wakefield if there is a no-deal Brexit. And indeed, if there is a deal, there will still be implications for places like this. So that's where we are on that. I'll do my best, Mr. Mayor, to answer any questions on those specific issues that I've raised today. Thank you.
Are there any questions on Councillor Boxer's report? Councillor Ahmed?
I've got two questions in relation to the Ofsted inspection. I think I said it off the record as well, and I'll say it officially, that I thought that the inspection would take place within a year of the first focus visit that took place in the council, which is normal practice. Obviously, the inspection came earlier than most people expected in the council chamber, but it delivered quite bad reading. So I would say that it wasn't a good inspection report to read in that sense there. And what we previously said, and it was prior to election, so we could have made a lot more of it than the Conservative group did at that time. However, there's a number of things within the inspection report itself that say there was continued concerns within there. So some of the concerns are what was already in place, but some of them are concerns that would continue with the current planning systems in place. So until an action plan is complete, normally an inspection doesn't take place. However, the council will be inspected again under a monitoring visit, and the monitoring visit will look at the action plan to see whether it's robust. And at this moment in time, there was, it says since the last inspection in 2016, I'm just going to draw some direct from the inspection report so we can ascertain what we need. Senior leaders across the council have not affected the improvement necessary to remove serious weaknesses or counter a decline in service quality. And it says many of the identified improvements, this is since 2016, have not been delivered, and previous good services have deteriorated. And obviously, I know your comments inside the Express, and obviously, you know, I assume you said more than that, obviously, but I think accountability, in terms of accountability, is always a wider leadership accountability, and there is, within the region of the inspection, because of the quality assurance processes, it says the quality assurance systems have not been implemented. So it says the quality assurance, they've not been robust or not been implemented, which says, really, I know Councillor Rowley has resigned or whatever it was, it does suggest there was a failing in Cabinet at that point there. Now that is, for me, easy for me to say because I stand outside the Cabinet, and there is other things in spite of it, because it was ineffective, it says inadequate in all the areas of the report. But within the first page, if you look on the first page, within the inspection report, and I think all of you must have read it by now, it says there, however, the plan, the council's plan, is not based on any systematic evaluation of the current service weaknesses or a full understanding of the experience of children. Now, it recommends what needs to be done in that place there, and I think it's important because The last inspection, the focus visit, was around February, March. We've had 5 months since that visit, and it's quite likely, I think, that the Ofsted will arrive during, let's assume they're not working in August, but LA inspections continue in August and September. So I would assume that in September or October there'll be a focus visit which will focus on that area. And I would say that it's important, I know most of you go on holidays and everything in August, that a plan is delivered, a robust plan is delivered within August. And I've said previously, I've spoken to Beate as well, I'm more than happy to take time out to do that, but I don't think we can continuously roll over. That's me giving you a bland summary of an inspection. I've looked at it in detail, I could have said a lot more, and I don't want to seem critical on that, and I've acknowledged that the inspection should not have taken place until a plan had been implemented. Or I should have done, the focus visit should have left to inspection straight away within the same week. So it's important that, recognising that it was inadequate within all areas, and the council now, including all opposition members as well, commit to working within the council, having a necessary challenge in place to make sure that whatever plan comes into place is robust, it's effective, it addresses the areas of Ofsted. I don't know whether I should be dancing or something. No, I don't know. And he's put me off.
Yeah, so I'm not often lost for words. I was last night, and I am now. Actually, I thank you for the way in which you put those comments. I really do. Look, the truth is this, that I could stand here and say, well, we don't accept all the report. We just, this bit. Look, what I've said publicly is this. We have got to accept the report, and I'm also pleased that you said, Councillor Ahmed, that every single person in this council chamber, everybody, has a responsibility. Because let me remind everybody, all of us are corporate parents, all of us. So everybody's got a responsibility. I've accepted, along with the Chief Executive, this report in its entirety, because it may well have come too soon and they shouldn't have carried out an inspection, but the reality is that they did. And in one sense, I'm pleased that they did. So if the plan hadn't been working, as you say, then we can make sure it is right now. And that's what we are going to do, to make sure that the improvement plan is the right plan and is properly delivered in a timely fashion. That's what we are going to do. And you've mentioned about Councillor Rowley. Let me tell you this, that Councillor Rowley cares deeply about the service and about children and young people. And I'd spoken to Olivia in the past about the huge pressures that any politician who's directly responsible will face. Olivia mentioned to me about some of the phone calls that she was getting. So I'm not going to, stand here and blame people. I'm not. Because this is collective. And, sometimes you do something and it's just better that there's maybe a new face and a new focus, which is why we've got a new corporate director. So that's where we are. We have got a situation where you couldn't get any worse, as you said. The only way to go is up, and we shall go up. Now, I'm not saying for a second that this is due to government cuts. I wouldn't seek to do that, but I will say this, that I know that an ex-minister, Tim Lawton, is quoted, and I've got the article here, who says that there is some culpability in terms of the cuts for the crisis in child protection. But if we're going to best serve the people that all of us want to serve, irrespective of party affiliation, as you say, we've got to put aside the politics and the opportunity of scoring political points and work together. So again, to repeat myself, I very much welcome the fact that you've agreed to work with us and give us the benefit of your experience.
Thank you. Are there any other questions on Councillor Box's report?
Yes,
Councillor
Mr
Tully.
Mayor, it's on a slightly, I echo the sentiments of the leader and take on board what the leader of the opposition has said, and thank him for his kind words to try to get us through this particular period, because like you said, it's not a great report. But my other issue is about Brexit, and whether we voted yay, nay, leave or stay, they've got to get it right. And I am worried, and I think, and I would welcome the leader's comments, that while we've spent 18, 19 months pontificating who's right and who's wrong, and people drawing fabulous cabinet salaries for doing 4 hours work, it's important that we do whatever we do, what we have to do in this part of the world to protect the people that we represent, because it's as clear to everybody, it's not project fear, it's clear to everybody now that if we crash out without a deal, and don't get a deal that is in line with protecting jobs and people's terms and conditions, that this area will suffer more than what it's already suffered. And I'm pleased to see that our leader has been invited through the LGA onto this board, but it's important that politically, it's no good blaming my party because we ain't part of the negotiations. There's somebody down there making a total pig's ear of it. And I would welcome the fact that our leader has been invited onto this board through the LGA, but it's important to get this mess sorted out so we can do what we're expected to do and to protect the long-term jobs, terms and conditions for the people that work in our part of the world and the people that we come here to represent.
I think if you ask 100 people on the street now, do you know what the impact will be to you and to Wakefield if there's a hard Brexit and we just leave without a deal? I suspect nobody could answer that question. I actually suspect nobody in this room could answer that question. And just to finish on a lighter note, if I can, despite the seriousness of this, just to say this group is torn because we always want one of our own to do well. We always want that. And obviously we support you, Nadeem, in your efforts to deselect Andrea Jenkins. But on the other hand, we entirely support Andrea Jenkins in saying that Theresa May should go. So we've got a dilemma. We're going to discuss and debate it in the future. We'll let you know which side we come down on the end.
Are there any other questions on Councillor Box? Councillor Harvey.
Just very quickly, come back to Councillor Tully's comment on Brexit. So at least this government is deliver the verdict of the people in Wakefield, which is 60% of the Brexit. So we, Tory government, Conservative, is going to make sure we leave the European Union as you have voted. And I suspect in this chamber, many of you would represent that 66%, and nothing more, nothing less. Thank you.
Well, that's not what Jacob Rees-Mogg's saying. He's the leader of the de facto leader of the Conservative Party at the moment. He's not saying that. He's saying exactly the opposite that you've sold out. And it takes a certain kind of genius, let's be right, to get the Remainers and the Leavers joining together to say that the Chequers Agreement is a waste of space.
Are there any further questions on Councillor Box's report? If not, thank you, Councillor Box. We shall now move on to agenda item 8, which is to receive written Cabinet members' reports in accordance with Council Procedures Rule 14.1. Cabinet members have up to 5 minutes to present their report, and there are a further 15 minutes allocated to enable each Cabinet member to respond to any questions or brief comments on issues within their respective portfolios. The first report is from Councillor Mrs Jeffrey. Councillor Mrs Jeffrey, would you please introduce your report to Council?
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Before I do, can I also pay tribute to Bernadette? You've been a marvellous officer for this authority, Bernadette. You've helped us, you've guided us through many council meetings and given advice to us, and personally you've helped me with a number of issues, and I'll always be grateful to you, and I do wish you well for the future. I just want to raise a couple of things. We've been quite busy in regeneration, setting plans for our towns, for Wakefield, Pontefract, Castleford, Nottingley, all the plans. What we're trying to do is safeguard our towns for the threats that are coming, because being no doubt that town centres are under attack now from all sorts of fact that people are not shopping anymore in town centres. I wish people who complain about what we're doing would actually use the shops, and then we wouldn't probably be in that situation. But we are trying to safeguard our towns as best we can. I'd just like to draw attention to my page, on the last page of my report is the LDF. The local development framework is going to be so important to this district, and I need all of you to get involved in it. The workshops will be starting next week and into August for local members to attend. It's down to you to shape what you want to do in your area. Developers will come forward with plans for areas, but it's down to us in the end to see which way we go. So I do urge you to attend as many of these workshops as you can. If you find that you've got holiday commitments, we will arrange separate workshops. But I don't want people going across the towns all panicking that massive development is going to take place. We do need development, but it has to be measured and it has to be in the right place. And elected members will have the chance to shape that. So I do urge you to attend the workshops, as many as you can. If you can't, if you let me know, we'll arrange some extra ones. Thank you. I move my report.
Are there any questions or brief comments on Councillor Mrs Jeffrey's report? Councillor Mitchell.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. On agenda page 10, Councillor Jeffreys, I'm just very pleased to see that one of our district's employers, Haribo, are doing so well, as they have been doing for a number of years. But obviously they're in a very challenging industry, and obviously as the product appeals particularly to children, they're likely to be more challenged as time goes on with sugar taxes, etc., and a general move away from sweet confectionery. Are you aware, do the company have plans to counteract this, or are they going to make sugar-free or reduce sugar products in the future? Do you know?
Yeah, as I understand it, they are making plans to make a percentage cut in their sweeties, yeah.
Councillor Tully.
Thanks, Denise. Can I just ask you to pass on to the two new officers that's working now with the Peak projects within, probably doesn't appeal to everybody in this chamber. It certainly just does in the South East, where the European money has been successful. And having been involved with it for about the last 3 years and spent 2.5 years falling asleep, at least the guys now that's involved with that feel as though that they're trying to move it on and try to move it forward. And secondly, and as importantly, is about the LDF as well, because yes, please go to the briefings, speak to the planning officers about what's happening in your particular part of the world, and look at what's envisaged and what's and have some input into it rather than carping from the sidelines. And if we all do that, we can put a decent plan together which benefits our people, our industry, jobs and homes for our people as well.
Thanks for that, Steve. On the SILS money, for European money, I mean, this is probably the last European money that we will get, and it is for the South East mainly and parts of Castleford. It's taken a long time to get where we are, procedures and red tape, but we're about to start to spend and projects are coming forward, and before the end of October we shall start to give money out to the communities that really need them. So thank you for that.
Councillor Garbutt.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Just under page 12, Regeneration, the Town Heritage Initiative. I've chaired that meeting, and it's been very, very successful for Pontefract. It's transformed the town centre, and to me it's brought businesses into Pontefract as well, individual businesses, which is great for town centres. So it's been very welcome as that. Thank you.
Are there any further questions or comments? Councillor Eyre.
Yeah, I just want to echo what Councillor Pat Garrett's just said, and thank obviously the
myself for chairing that, and thank Denise for the hard work that she's done, and also the council officers to make Pontefract look absolutely fantastic. We had the Licorice Festival there not that long ago, and it was brilliant. But there is one burning question that many residents and people visiting Pontefract are asking, and that's if there's any update about the counting house.
Yeah. The counting house is quite a controversial issue, and I'm not quite au fait with where we are at the moment, but I will get Pontefract members a report so that they'll know exactly where we are.
If there are no further questions on Councillor Jeffrey, thank you, Councillor Jeffrey. Councillor Mrs. Jeffrey. The next is the portfolio holder for adults and health. Councillor Mrs. Garbutt, would you please introduce your report to Council?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. In moving my report, could I just mention to people about the Social Issues Cafe? If people could attend there, it's a brilliant cup of coffee. I often call in if I'm walking into town. So if councillors can support it, that would be great. With that, I move my report. But can I also mention, I don't know if members will recall that we was contacted by a lady called Jo Andrew in May. Jo had set up a petition on behalf of her friend Susan Hutchinson with regards to stage 4 non-Hodgkin's lymphoma. Susan found out that she was only eligible for statutory sick pay. This is because at present people facing cancer cannot claim personal independence payment until 3 months after their diagnosis. Susan needed help to both cover basic household expenses along with the extra costs arising from the undergoing treatment. As a result, she has had to rely on friends who have helped to raise £4,000 to cover her expenses while she is in treatment. What we're asking, Susan and Jo are asking people to support their petition, which calls on the government to abolish the 3-month qualifying period to receive personal independent payment, which is PIP, so that people receiving chemotherapy can obtain PIP as they start the treatment. Can I ask, I don't know whether people do support it, but if you do, can you go online? The petition number is 215775, and that ends in October. Thank you. With that, I remove.
Are there any questions or brief comments on Councillor Mrs. Garbutt's report? Thank you, Councillor Mrs. Garbutt. The next report is the portfolio holder for children and young people. Councillor Mrs. Isherwood, would you please introduce your report to Council?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. First of all, I'll go to the Ofsted report and perhaps respond to some of the questions raised by Councillor Ahmed. We did actually have a briefing earlier prior to Council for the improvement journey, and I thank those members who attended, and I hope they gained something from it. I am going to have the slides sent out, but it does give full details of where we are with the improvement journey. So if any members who didn't attend but have questions on the slides, please do not hesitate to contact me. One of the things we need to do now as a council is work together and listen to everybody, what everybody's got to say, because all this is important information that needs to come into us. With regard to the visit, I was of the mind that it came in too early, but having seen what the result was, I have to say that it was stuff we needed to know so that we could identify where we needed to work, what processes we need to put in place. So yes, it didn't give us a great deal of time to set up the improvement journey, but in a way it has helped us because it's helped us to identify places where we really need to do the work. One of the first things that we did do was actually inject £1 million out of reserves into the service to immediately work with some of the stuff that needs to be done, like recruitment and retaining good social workers. The baseline has been adjusted in the budget by 3.5 million. This will make sure that the money that's going in is sustainable over time. So this isn't just a one-off payment coming into the budget. It's going to be money that's available over the years so that we can prove sustainability. With regard to we have a new safeguarding director coming in August. Once Vicky Schofield, very experienced young woman, once she is in place, the senior management team will have been put in place and hopefully they can then move on. With regards to the improvement journey, the improvement board is meeting on the 2nd of August. We are actually going to look at the Ofsted report and review what we've already put down in the improvement plan, working in workshops so we can actually discuss what we need to be in that improvement plan. So the improvement plan is actually worked out with partners and members of the council and officers. Moving on from that, one of the problems that was highlighted was caseloads. Social workers have been under a great deal of pressure for a great number of years, and caseloads have been too high. Part of the thing that we're going to do is, with the extra money, is recruit more, which is difficult, recruiting experienced social workers, but we will do our best. Support newly qualified. We've set up an academy which will give the support to the newly qualified social workers. This is something else identified in the Ofsted report. So they will actually be allocated to teams, but they will have the opportunity to get the support that they need to move forward with their jobs. Another thing that I feel strongly about is the early learning, the early help hubs. I feel we've let them down, really. We've taken away funding from them, and we need to have a full review of early help and partnership working. So that is something that we're going to be working with. We've also appointed a new early help partnership interim service director, Stephen Cross, who's done a great deal of good work with the youth service, so I have every confidence he'll be able to help us on that. As I say, I have got these slides which I'm going to send out, which will detail everything that we're doing at the moment. I don't want to go through it now. I've been through it this morning, or Beate. Oh, I must say, I have every confidence in Beate Wagner. I think she's doing an excellent job. So anybody has any further questions on this, I'm happy to look at them if you send them in to me. Moving on to the actual report. Oh, I would also add that we feel we need to communicate more with the social workers as well, and the children. And with that in mind, we've actually visited, Richard, Beate and I have visited the locality teams, and we're visiting the early help. I have to finish now, but I would say that we are doing a number of briefings over the next few months. Please attend. I think Councillor Shaw is going to go into more detail on those. And with that, I move my report.
Thank you, Councillor Isherwood. Are there any questions or brief comments on the report? Councillor Jones.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Can I say, from overview and scrutiny, has prepared a rigorous programme for the rest of the municipal year, and has submitted a list of plans, and obviously I've welcomed the conversations that I've been able to have with BRT, who's been very supportive and obviously been able to give me a lot of advice. I think the committee has been broken into 4 subcommittees as well in order to carry on their work in more detail, and obviously continue the work with Councillor Isherwood and Councillor Malkin in terms of the work on the corporate corporate parenting committee. So work is ongoing. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Tully.
I'm pleased that Councillor Isherwood has raised, although I said from the outset, you know, the report's inadequate and it needs some attention and we don't need to go over the ground, but I'm pleased she's raised the issue about staff, because the finest asset that we have is the members of staff that work for us, and we must never forget that. Staff have been under excessive pressure across all departments. And when people are reporting to me that it's far easier to get a job in little shelf stacking with better terms and conditions and less stress, we have to start and take an hard, long look in the mirror about where we are left ourselves 7, 8, 9 years down the line with austerity. Because we can't get away from it. No excuses for the inadequacy, no excuses from where we are, but we can't divorce ourselves away from it. But we need to take our staff with us. It is interesting to see that we need to be able to look at retaining staff across both adult and children's social work. But it's pressure that these people have had to bear over the years, but we cannot divorce ourselves entirely from the position that we find ourselves in vis-a-vis cuts. And I'm not making an excuse for the report. The report's diabolical, and I've no doubt this council will come together to make it go in the right direction. But let's not forget about the people who's working at the coalface and the pressures and the trials and tribulations that these people have been under for the last number of years. Not an excuse, but it can't be forgotten as well when we're looking at when we move this situation forward.
Are there any further? Councillor Graham.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'd just like to ask Margaret how the recruitment is going for the fostering, if you've getting plenty of applications, and if the recent reports have had an impact on that.
Yeah. It's difficult, Monica. It's difficult to recruit. It's a difficult area to recruit staff. One of the things we have done is set up a retention scheme so that we retain the experienced staff that we already have, because what we don't want is to see staff leaving. We need to retain the people we have, because there's a lot of good social work going on, and as I've said, they're being under strain. We are putting it out, advertising for the social workers, but I can't say at this moment in time how effective it is, but I can send you an answer later if that's okay.
Councillor Holwell.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'd just like to say that I attended the briefing this morning, and the presentation was excellent, both from Beata and from Councillor Isherwood. We know we've problems, and we know we've had a very bad report, and we have to move in the right direction, obviously. But I urge all members who are to take part in these briefing sessions, because it's part of the wider remit that we are all responsible. We all have to get involved. We all have to communicate with one another in whatever way we can, so that our staff know that we're behind them, even though this has been a very bad report. That the only way to have good staff is to be supportive of them and to realise the difficulties they're in, which I know we all agree with what I'm saying, I'm sure. But yes, you know, support the training, support the briefings. Let's all work together, because this morning was excellent, and thank you for your answer.
Thank you, Councillor Holwell. Councillor Harvey.
Just want to reiterate what we should or shouldn't say about this damning report. We have failed our children badly. Up and down the country in England, there's 300-some principal councils. We are at the bottom of 10%. So please don't mention that A word again, because the council now has to dig out £5 million or more to repair this service and to make sure that we move forward. So now that, what does that do for us? Well, we keep saying about this cut and that, but some councils can do better with the cuts applied to all of us. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Are there any further questions or brief comments on the report? If not, thank you, Councillor. Mrs. Isherwood.
Next is the portfolio.
Next is the portfolio holder for corporate services. Councillor Shaw, will you please introduce your report to Council?
Before I start my report, I'd also like to say a few words to Bernadette. I've worked alongside and with Bernadette for quite a while now, and it's not just for the good advice that she gives. She's also got this stare when we sat down the table, and I'm sure some of the officers up there can reinforce that. When certain conversations are going down an avenue that she's not really au fait with. But certainly, I thank you, Bernadette, not just for all the good governance and everything like that. We've had some really good conversations going forward that's helped, certainly me personally, in making some of the decisions that we have to make. So I wish you all the best for the future as well. This is to reiterate what Margaret and what Councillor Isherwood actually said. The Member Support and Development Group, we've just started it up, and it is really an important group.
We are looking at some of the training and development actually that we want to take forward and to help councillors understand, but there will be some mandatory courses where we will mandate that people should actually attend them. One of them, and it was excellent, Margaret, by the way, it was excellent this morning. It gave everybody an overview, and thank PRT for all the information that we got this morning. I think it's important, but it's only as good as us, me included, attending them. If we don't attend them, then it's no good coming up later on and saying what's happening here and why, you know, why has that happened. So I urge people to actually attend those courses, and I'm sure they will do. And if they don't do, then it is up to the whips, and we've talked to the whips, and Margaret is on the committee, and so is Richard, and we're really keen on this, so let's look forward to that side of it. The other side of it is the development side. That's important, because we've got councillors, both old and new, who need developing in certain areas. The world's moving around in all sorts of different areas, so attending those courses are important. The other thing that I need to draw reference to, supplier early payment programme. I think it's been excellent from our colleagues in finance that one of the biggest problems with smaller suppliers is cash flow, and it is a serious problem for small business. And what we're proposing here, and we took it through cabinet, is that we pay early as we can, and it's good because it's good for the economy, it's good for small businesses, and we'll develop that side of it. What's also good is that the larger businesses can come along to us, but we will charge them a small percentage if they want, certainly if they want us to pay it up earlier. But it is a good scheme, and I thank finance colleagues for bringing it forward. With that, I'll move my report.
Thank you, Councillor. Are there any questions or brief comments on Councillor Shaw's report? Councillor Hemingway.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I welcome the report regarding the Member Support and Development Group, Les, but I just think it's vital that the group takes into account councillors that do work full-time. A lot of the trade and development opportunities that take place at the moment are in the day, and it's sometimes quite difficult for us to get to those, speaking as somebody who does work full-time. So if the group could take into account the need for evening sessions after working hours, that would be much appreciated.
Thank you, Councillor Hemingway. Are there any further brief comments or questions? Councillor Ahmed.
I'm just going to agree with Councillor Hemingway on that. It's a matter that I've raised in the council before, and if we look at the working practices of Kirklees, I've spoken with Councillor Masood down there, and Bradford as well, Councillor Khan, I'm saying all their working practices actually fall. They do variation of meeting times, etc. as well. And I think it's something that I think we should, whilst he was here, I think it's something that I brought up a number of times. We had the council meeting at 4 previously. I know their attendance on there, but we've asked Margaret as group whip to follow up all training with the Conservative group. I think it's important that to give the group whips that autonomy. We need to make sure that we have the appropriate times which allow people to attend. I also think in the future, rather than just looking at remuneration of councillors, that we allow an independent people to look at it. We've got people already in place. If we add that onto their remit, it's something that they could perhaps look and speak to councillors independently and have a view on that as well.
Councillor Graham.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'd just like to say how I find so useful the members' inquiries. It says my account here, Professor Maker, but I've been using customer services members' inquiries lately, and I find it very, very helpful because I can direct casework to them. They found out who the appropriate council officer is. I don't have to spend hours trying to find out who that person is to direct casework to them, and I found it extremely useful and time-saving. So I'd like to say, although it might not be self-service through my account, it's very popular with me anyway, and I think members' inquiries have done a fantastic job because they come back to me and give me feedback.
We've already discussed, and I think it is important, and I welcome both comments. We've already discussed doing things at different times. it is difficult not to do them at different times, and we do recognise that people work full time, but we also have to recognise that that's why not every single training and development will be mandatory. I don't want people to go away thinking that. But there's certain areas where all councillors ought to be trained up on. But we will make sure that everybody gets a chance. There will be different courses run at different times to make sure that everybody has a chance. I welcome what you're saying, Monica, and members' inquiry is good, but my account is growing, and it's growing rapidly. And there is a lot of good work done, and I'm sure people behind will take it back to the staff. It is difficult sometimes, you know, workload and how things come through, but it is also a good system, and we do encourage people to actually do self-serve, because the more that self-serving, the quicker that people will get information and want to phone in. But we also recognise that there are some people who haven't got access to some of the digital sort of things that we're doing, and we're making sure that we can keep them informed as well. So we'll take it on board.
Councillor Isherwood.
Just a point that maybe it may improve my account is that when you send a job in, send the number back, 10 Jack Queen, it will be attended to within 10, 15 days, whatever it is. And then when 10, 15 days has gone by, they'll probably send you another one saying, well, I'm sorry, we haven't been able to achieve that figure, that time scale, but we will put it in. It'll be another 10 Jack Queen, right? So by the time they've got back to you, they'll turn around and say, well, I'm sorry, but job number 10 Jack Queen King, we haven't been able. By that time, you're wondering what 10 Jack Queen King is, because you put that many in. Maybe one little bit of, it's constructive criticism maybe, instead of putting 10 Jack Queen, if you just put the name of the job. If it was a footpath on Priory Road, if you just say, well, your inquiry on footpath on Priory Road will be 10 days, and I'm sorry it hasn't been done. But otherwise it's good. But I received one yesterday saying that the standing water that you commented on, I'm hoping now it'll be done in the next week or so. So I scratched my brain, and these heat conditions, I have no idea there's any standing water on highway anywhere in Featherstone. So the 10 Jack Queen King didn't work. So it would be useful if they just give you a little clue as to what they're talking about. Thank you.
Yeah, it's a good point, but what I would say is that's not the issue with my account. What my account's doing is collecting things, and then the information goes into departments, Graham. And it's the departments that are looking at that. So what we can do is we can measure whether some of these departments are under pressure and what they can do and how quickly they can do it. So my account helps with that side of it. What we need to do is look at the times that we get into people or get into issues, and we can collate the information through my account. So I'll certainly get back in touch with you and we'll look at that. We'll look at that as well.
Councillor Rhodes.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Agreeing with the comments that Councillor Isherwood has made, but there's the other part of it as well which concerns me, and that is our constituents, the return information to our constituents to know that it's actually been reported, when it's going to be completed. I've asked the question on several occasions, how will our constituent know that this is actually being reported and when the job is targeted to do? And in one occasion, I got a blank. Maybe it was a new member of staff, I don't know. But as far as our constituents coming to our surgeries and reporting to us either via email, phone or in person, they're the people that are important for departments to connect back to, as well as the councillors, to let them know that we've actually reported it and it is being handled by X, Y and Z and what the target date is.
Thank you. If there are no further questions or brief comments on Councillor Shaw's report, thank you, Councillor Shaw. Moving on to the portfolio holder for Culture, Leisure and Sport, Councillor Ms Spate, would you please introduce your report to Council?
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Just to pick out a couple of things. On the 28th of June, around 100 pupils from 9 Ossett schools attended the annual Education Ossett Community Trust and Schools Library Service Book Awards. It's a collaboration which also includes Ossett Academy. Children shortlist books for 2 awards and then invite the authors of the final selections to a celebration event. And it's just a great example of inspiring pupils to read for pleasure. Secondly, if any of you haven't yet been to see the Quentin Blake exhibition in Wakefield Library Museum, then I suggest you do so. We've been successful in bidding to be one of only 3 locations nationwide to tour the Centenary Portraits exhibition. The exhibition marks the 100 years since the birth of Roald Dahl, and if any of you are Roald Dahl fans, I really do suggest that you go and see the portraits because they're quite a treat. And with that, I move my report.
Thank you. Are there any questions or brief comments on Councillor Mr Spate's report? No, thank you. Councillor Mr Spate. The next report is that from portfolio holder Communities and Environment. Councillor Mrs Cummins, will you please introduce your report to Council?
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Just a couple of points I'd like to pick up. The weather is hot and we all do need to stay safe and dehydrated, and we don't need to be doing that in bodies of water across the district because we could soon get ourselves into bother. So just to reinforce the fact that we need to stay safe during the hot weather. And secondly, just to add again my congratulations to the domestic abuse team for actually attaining the West Yorkshire Domestic Violence and Abuse Quality Mark. It does show that the team is actually offering a fantastic service to those people who need it across our district. I too would like to add my thanks to Bernadette and wish her very, very well in her retirement. I've known Bernadette since she came here and she has been marvellous in everything that she's done and in helping members when they have been in a bit of bother themselves, and I'm sure she knows what I'm talking about. So I do wish you well in your retirement. It's been brilliant working with you. Thank you. With that, I move my report.
Are there any questions or brief comments on Councillor Mrs Cummins' report? No? Thank you, Councillor Mrs Cummins. The final Cabinet Member report is that for the portfolio holder for Transport and Highways, Councillor Morley. Would you please introduce your report to Council?
Thank you very much, Mr Mayor. Just a couple of things I want to add. You couldn't believe, Mr Mayor, that it was less than 6 months ago we cancelled the council meeting because we couldn't get back to the district because of the snow and the ice, and we had the gritters out there and it was all freezing to death. And now, less than 6 months on, I've got gritters out going around the district, making sure that the roads are not melting, or as I keep calling them, bleeding roads. It just goes to show, though, the magnitude of what we face as an Highways Authority, the weather conditions, how it does affect the Highways network. I do applaud what Highways are doing to make sure the roads are safe. When the roads do start deteriorating in the weather, it is no cost to the council. The contractor has made the improvements to them, has to go back and put them right. So, but I do apologise for any inconvenience it has caused to residents with having a bit of dust flying around. Mr Mayor, moving on to the second point though, I want to mention Aberford Road outside the hospital. We've suddenly started getting parking problems down Aberford Road as a result of people either visiting or working at the hospital. So the fact it is causing some congestion down there. I've met with local members, I've met with frustrated bus users, and we are putting a permanent traffic regulation order down there. There'll be a consultation starting on that process. It has already started, Mr Mayor, in fact. But it will be a lengthy process as they are a statutory thing to go through. So we'll be putting in a temporary order till we get the main order in place. To ease some congestion down there. I do think it is a concern to people and to ambulance users as well around that area. But with that, I move my report, Mr Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Morley. Councillor Graham.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Yes, Matthew, the parking on Aberford Road, I think every councillor in this chamber has problems in the ward with this type of thing, parking on streets. And particularly in Barnsley Road, we have the same thing. I just wonder what we can do, what's our first sort of process to go into this protocol of getting a traffic regulation order. A lot of us have capital grant, we'd like to pay for double yellow lines out of our capital grant, but what we need to know is how do we first start, the first steps to get this done, because I think everyone will be asking for the same thing. So if you could let us know what we do first, how we get the ball rolling, we'd be very grateful. Thank you.
Thank you. I won't bore all members of council now with the lengthy process it is, but I will get an email sent out that if you want to go down that way of paying for a traffic regulation order, obviously there's only so much money in the council that we have to do the traffic regulation orders across the district every year. We've got to meet a criteria. I had one in my ward which didn't meet the criteria, but residents were asking for it, so we paid out of our capital money towards a TRO. It's actually the TRO, the legal process, that costs the amount of money. Actually putting the lines down is split out. So I will put that out. You can do it. You can go through there. I will put an email out to all members. But basically, I'm asking for a meeting with Highways, but they will go through the process and talk to you. But as any process, you know, with traffic regulation orders, whether it be yellow lines, single yellow lines, perk parking, it solves a problem in one area and moves on somewhere else, as we know. And we're chasing ourselves around the district all the time. But I do think with outside the hospital, it is a priority.
Councillor Rowley.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. As you know, we've been inundated with comments about Aberford Road, as well as Councillor Lund, and we really welcome what's proposed. But my real concern is that it's only happened in the last, 6-8 weeks, and therefore what is the cause of it? And it would appear that it's to do with the hospital, so we need to take some sort of action. We've got a hospital that's charging too much, I think excessively, for parking charges, not accommodating the workers where it would be a reduction in their salary if the amount goes up. And I'm really disappointed that they've created this problem in our ward simply because they've taken action. There was no problems before, and now we're in a situation where we need to take this action as a council simply because everybody is so inconvenienced and in fact in danger in some circumstances. It's just not good enough, and I think the hospital have been really to blame on this issue. I'm really disappointed.
I believe there is a planning application to extend the hospital car park, I believe. I don't know if that's true or not, but it's what I've been told. But no matter what, whether you've got enough car parking, no matter what the price of the car parking is, unfortunately people's habits will be, if you can get away with not paying whatever it is a day, people will do that around public buildings, around hospitals. So I do believe it's right we put this order in place, Olivia, but I do also believe they're trying to make some more capacity down there as well.
Councillor Isherwood.
Could I just, I never thought I'd say this in this council, to be honest with you, but I'm always one of the first to start acknowledging the conditions, what the staff work in both highways, street scene, and anybody else who's working outside. And I never thought I'd be standing up and saying, would you pass our best wishes and congratulations to the staff both in street scene, highways, and in fact anybody who's working outside. I mean, we had our bins empty first thing in the morning, and it was something 28 degrees. And they were physically, you could see they were shattered at that time in the morning. They were just running off on what sweat because they have to wear the high-vis stuff and all that kind of. Same with Matthew's highway people. We all expect the streets to be kept clean, which they usually are. But you can see these people are really under pressure, and I think this council should be sending the congratulations to our staff for the conditions that they're working in. People like looking down Peter. Nobody used to congratulate us like, but it would equally as odd. Joking apart, I think this council should be acknowledging our workforce in these inclement days.
Thank you. Councillor Rhodes.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Just a little bit of licence on parking, if I may. Just to ask Matthew, and perhaps where relevant to follow on, has any further thought been given to park and ride schemes outside, such as Wakefield? This has been some thoughts for some years. I know the parking issue isn't just relative to Wakefield or city centres across the district. But for many years there's been some thoughts about different parts of the district, Junction 39, Junction 40, down Doncaster Road to help out, some park and ride schemes. And if there is any way that there's any funding that can be available through the combined authority to help with traffic flow problems.
Park and ride schemes, if you get one right, like Elm Road in Leeds, it works very, very, very well. And actually you can make money out of it, and it suits people who work in the city centre and can ease congestion. If you get it wrong, like the one at Woodhouse, Adwick Lee Street in Doncaster, I believe it can start costing a council quite a lot of money because it's too near to the city centre, it's not well used. So it's about getting that gauge where you put it better. It has been talked to for many different years about different locations. We've never seemed to be able to identify a location which we think would work for the city. It's something that we do explore, we do talk about it. There would be funding available, I would believe, from the West Yorkshire Combined Authority, though we've got quite a lot of them already going on, but it's about where you would actually put it. But it's something that we do constantly talk about. I can't give you a direct yes or no at the moment.
Councillor Box.
I'll tell you what concerns me is that if we solve this problem, it will move elsewhere. That's what bothers me. So I think what we need to do as part of, if you like, a more comprehensive strategy is to do the order, but at the same time ask officer colleagues to carry out some surveys to find out where the problem might move to. Because there's ward colleagues now, the ward members know, as you're passing the hospital, up that other street, whose name I don't know, they're already parking there. So what we've got to make sure is we don't simply move the problem along. So what I suggest is we ask officers to do that, to future-proof this order. And secondly, to take up Councillor Rowley's point, is actually to write to the hospital and say, what are you doing about it? What are you going to do? Because we'll be held responsible, as always, the first time there's an ambulance can't get through. And if you go on that road, you can't get two buses through with those cars parked on that side. And the other day, they were actually parking on both sides. I mean, it's just ludicrous. So let's make sure that we sort this, but then we don't create another problem. And, let's write to the hospital and say they've got some responsibility about this. So the better, we want some action from them.
Councillor Swift.
Yeah, as part of this, it's not just looking at the TRO on Aberford Road, we're looking at other parts as well. We are looking at other parts in Wakefield East Ward, and also actually my ward has been affected with it. But it is, thank you very much. So it's about a guessing game. It's a guessing game of where they're going to move the traffic onto, but you do end up chasing it round with that. You are right, the hospital do have some responsibility of this. I do believe we have already wrote out to them, or we are going to be writing out to them very soon about it as well, but what onus is there, what force can you put on them to do anything about it? That's what will be the debate, I believe, but we will write out to them, like you say, Leader.
Councillor Swift.
As I say, my point was actually dealt with by the Leader.
Thank you. Councillor Harvey.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just a quick question for Councillor Morley. I'm in a rural ward, and in the last 6 months, we have at least 6 fatalities on the road safety issue. So I wonder whether Councillor Morley has a general plan to improve the road safety in my ward. So what happened in Hague Lane, in Middletown, in many areas of my ward has really have a knock-on effect on people's life at the moment. Thank you.
Of course, we look at all road safety and all road safety aspects. Blacker Lane that is in your ward, that we've had quite a lot of, and former councillor, Mr Mayor, Kevin, has been heavily involved in that. I know to sort out problems down there, look at all aspects of speeding and safety. The way it comes down to speeding, and it's not just an highways point of view, it's also working in conjunction with the police. We are doing that a lot more closely now. We've had a lot more joined up more meetings with the local inspectors, so we are dealing with issues as and when they arise.
If there are no more questions or brief comments, sorry, Stan. Councillor Hammond.
Just to pick up Councillor Rowley's comment there, I think on the council procedures allow a motion to be given without notice on, from the leader or the mayor. So as Councillor Rowley pointed out, the parking issues in Pinderfields affect a number of our residents. So if we agree in the council chamber, we can agree now to write a letter to Pinderfields Hospital and the management trust of that, and that I'm sure there'll be unanimous agreement on that and the costs, especially to our most vulnerable people who spend longest time in there. So I'm suggesting that we put a motion forward without notice to that effect, so the wording is agreed rather than waiting for another council meeting.
I know we're coming from council, but we've said we've agreed as a group that we will write to the trust. So do we need a motion when we're all in agreement with it? It will happen. So I don't think we need a motion. But Mr Mayor, it's down to you.
Councillor Morley, you don't need a motion. Matthew, in his post cabinet member for highways, can give a direction to officers to instruct them to send a letter to the hospital.
Direction, fine, as long as we leave the council chamber with that.
Yeah, you're happy with that, you can do that. No. Thank you, Councillor Morley. Are there any questions or brief comments, further questions on Councillor Morley's report? If not, thank you, Councillor Morley. And that concludes the Cabinet Members' Report. Agenda item 10 is to deal with any questions made by members. No questions have been received. The final agenda item is to deal with any motions proposed by members in accordance with Council procedures rules as set out in the Constitution. There are two motions. Councillor Michael Graham, would you please move your motion to Council?
Thank you, Mr Mayor. In moving this motion, I would first like to draw members' attention to the issue of tampon tax. In 1973, when the UK joined the common market, VAT was added to sanitary products at a rate of 8%. This figure rose gradually until 1991, when it was 17.5%, and in January 2001, the Labour government moved sanitary products onto a reduced rate of 5%, following a sustained campaign and several debates in Parliament. The figure of 5% was then, and still remains, the lowest rate possible under the EU's VAT rules. In March 2016, Paula Sheriff, MP for Dewsbury and a former member of this council, made history by becoming the first backbench MP to have an amendment to a government budget formally accepted. This amendment sought to abolish the tampon tax, and the amendment had an implementation date of 2022 at the very latest. But the government have now indicated this could happen this year due to EU VAT rules no longer applying post-Brexit. I think all members will agree that taxing sanitary products on luxurious, non-essential grounds is wrong, especially when stamps, maintenance of private jets and Shockport pita bread are all exempt. As one woman put it, periods are no luxury. You opt in to extravagance, you cannot choose to menstruate. Bloody Good Period, a charity which provides menstrual supplies to food banks, asylum centres and to those who can't afford them, estimate that the average lifetime cost of menstruation is about £4,800. That's £120 a year, or roughly £11 a period. Of course, £11 a month may not be much to some people, but for those thousands of women struggling to make ends meet, those women that are on low wages, 0-hour contracts, and relying on food banks, it's a huge amount of money. The fact is, some women are being forced to make difficult decisions about whether to even purchase sanitary products at all. As you will all know, the tampon tax fund is a scheme set up by government in the interim until VAT can be removed, and it provides grants for women's charities and organisations funded by receipts from VAT on sanitary protection. Whilst I welcome the fact that some of the revenue tax generated is directed towards good causes, such as shelters for women fleeing domestic violence, I also question why women, through the taxation system, are subsidising the cost of protection from domestic abuse. What I welcome more and would like to praise is the work done by charities up and down this country, such as Bloody Good Period, the Red Box Project and the Homeless Period, who are working to provide sanitary products to our most vulnerable and raising awareness of this issue nationally. I would also like to praise the Community Foundation in Wakefield, who have just been awarded a grant of £17,000 to help with period poverty. I know this money will go towards supporting groups working with women and girls across Wakefield and helping to build skills and confidence and improving health and well-being. But what's really important when it comes to addressing any problem, it's not only do you have to acknowledge that it actually exists, but you also have to be fully aware of the scale of it. As a secondary school teacher, I've witnessed firsthand instances where girls as young as 11 are routinely missing school because they aren't able to access protection. Students choosing to stay at home and to avoid the embarrassment of bleeding on their school uniform in front of their peers because they aren't adequately protected. You only have to do a quick search on the internet to come across many stories of girls who are going to school using socks stuffed with tissues, old torn t-shirts, or even newspaper in some cases. Research conducted by Always has revealed that a lack of access to sanitary products can have a far-reaching effect on young women's lives. And women who have experienced period poverty are more likely to suffer from anxiety, depression, or even struggle to pay the bills. The study found women who struggle to afford sanitary products are less likely to have completed their GCSEs and also less likely to go on to study A-levels. There are schools which provide sanitary products in a private room where girls don't have to ask anyone for access, but this practice is not widespread. Indeed, many teachers in many schools across the country have come forward to say they regularly buy sanitary products for students. Reports from charities and voluntary groups have shown of girls from low-income families, as many as 1 in 10, struggling to afford sanitary protection. The recent limited research carried out by the Department for Education into the link between school absence and period poverty was deeply disappointing for several reasons. It failed to find out how period poverty affects school attendance, it ignored the wider impacts of period poverty, and it also failed to investigate how menstruation impacts girls' education experiences more generally.
Councillor Graham, there's a clock telling me you've had your time.
Okay. Thanks, Mr Mayor. Period poverty is a massive problem, and I would encourage all members on both sides to support this motion. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Graham. Is the motion seconded? Thank you, Councillor. Ms Hepworth, do you wish to formally speak now or reserve your right to speak until later in the debate? Thank you.
Thank you. I'd like to echo what Michael has been saying and begin by giving just some figures that I've got from the Children's Plan International UK charity back in 2017. 1 in 10 teenage girls at some point have been unable to afford sanitary products, and 1 in 7 have had to borrow tampons or sanitary towels from a friend because they can't afford to buy their own. As one of the world's richest countries, I find this very appalling that in today's world, women are struggling to buy sanitary towels and pads and tampons in this country. Then again, evident from last month's council meeting, when we were discussing food bank usage, it's hardly surprising that we are discussing the use of that people can't afford to provide people can't afford to buy sanitary products when in fact we are struggling to provide even for our families. Michael's touched upon the 5% VAT that sanitary products are taxed at and what is exempt. What is also taxed at 5% is energy-saving materials, including insulation and solar panels. Why is it important that I pay 5% on a luxury item when the same tax is evident for solar panels and insulation. How is that fair in today's standards? It's also noting that maternity pads for people that have babies and they're used after pregnancy is also taxed at 5%. So somehow we are being taxed for being a woman. Michael touched upon the higher rate of what tampons cost. I would like to touch upon the lower rate of what tampons cost. Tesco, who have absorbed the cost of the VAT, are one of the lowest providers of tampons and pads at 66 pence for 14 pads. Take for instance the average woman. The average woman's period lasts about 5 days. On average, you're meant to change your pad or tampon every 6 hours. So if your period lasts for 5 days and you change it to 6 days, that's 20 pads. So if Tesco's are paying 14 for 66 pence, that's automatically 122. So 122 is not a lot. However, who's average in this world? That's also not taking into consideration the fact that you have a light period. Do you ever suffer from cramps, need medication or anything like that, which adds on to the cost? So pushing about £2 if you get everything at the cheaper rate. Fair enough. That's all right if you haven't had a problem, that you're not living paycheck to paycheck and you haven't had a problem come up, or you've managed to get into your 0 hours contract this week. Other than that, when you're just with £2 to buy a tampon or pad or to feed your child this month, the choice is evident. So it's not surprising that women are struggling and girls are choosing not to buy tampons and instead go with socks and other things. Luckily, I've never had to experience this, and I hope I never do. But as the Scottish Government has laid forth, they've just recently introduced a programme that has rolled out over £500,000 to provide free sanitary products for women on low incomes. How is it we're following Scotland's example and not leading the way? I support this motion, and I hope the government does take a strong look at how we can support low-income households and how we can make sure that girls stay in school to improve their outlook in life. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Epworth. Councillor Hammond has submitted an amendment to the motion. The amendment has been circulated to members prior to the meeting. Councillor Ahmed, would you please introduce your amendment?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just in addition to the amendment, there was obviously a number of things I included in there from a different perspective that were obviously not in the motion, but I would say that it's I think Councillor Graham brought forward an important motion. I know that's been debated in Parliament, and Paula Sheriff, who was a councillor here, has been the main person behind that within Parliament in bringing that forward. And as you've said, I was guessing that he was within education, and we all come across different issues within education. They're not new issues that have come about recently, but they've been around for a long time. So from my own management experience in education and working across different trusts, I would say that I would remind the council that that all schools have a procurement budget. This is schools, and they allocate that wherever they choose to allocate, and they're held accountable specifically on the spending of that. In our trust, another trust that I know of, the vast majority of schools, I'm talking about 80 schools experienced here, so do provide facilities within the school, including uniforms. And I think although motion is good, I think there's a general issue for parents within schools, and this is focused around sanitary products, but there's a general issue with cost of uniforms, which affects most parents, the cost within schools, the provision, the competition within them areas as well. But I just want to draw attention, I've added on a number of components within there, so providing toiletries, including sanitary products. I think the schools do actually a good job. I don't know if his school doesn't do that, but the vast majority of them that I'm aware of will provide. And I think it's important for us, where governors in schools, to take that message back from the council. If they're not providing them, and the vast majority of schools provide extra shirts, trousers, where the school, there's always accidents happening in school, especially in primary and secondary as well, that they continue to provide them provisions, and if they're not providing them, they have a dedicated schools budget which is specifically allocated to disadvantaged pupils. So it can't be spent on anything else. And the choice that the schools make is down to the governing body, and then they will obviously held accountable for that. So the finance goes directly towards school children. So I'm just, in terms of the motion, I mean, obviously I support the vast majority of the motion, but I think it's an issue that has existed, pre-existed a long time before zero-hour contracts have become more accessible for people or more widely available. It's been around in education. I've been in education since 2003. It's been around since then. We've been providing school uniforms in 2003, sanitary products, toiletries, deodorants, cleaning facilities on schools, showers, all these things have been around since 2003. I know the teachers I speak to who have got significantly more experience than me have been providing them prior to that as well. So the amendment is no way a contradiction of what you've written. Obviously wouldn't have gone through. It's supporting your amendment, it's supporting the overall stance of the motion, but it's recognising that schools have a role to play to support children in ensuring that they have a safe environment, comfortable environment, where these things are provided free of charge, and they are currently, as my understanding is. Thank you.
Thank you. Is the amendment seconded?
Yes, I'd like to second the amendment.
Thank you, Councillor. Mrs Howell, do you wish to formally speak now or reserve your right to speak until later in the debate?
I'll speak now, if I may, Mr Mayor. I, obviously being a woman, agree with the majority of the motion that is being proposed by Councillor Graham. But our amendment notes that the majority of schools within our area have provided toiletries, including sanitary products. Now, in my experience, schools do provide this. It does come out of the pupil premium, and schools do work with children to make sure that they're properly looked after. And in addition to this, I know a lot of women's charity organisations that are aware of this problem and do raise money or send money from their voluntary work to support the schools in their area. And this, I know, happens locally, and I'm sure this happens, across a larger locality. And I know poverty is distressing, but most decent people are willing to provide voluntary help from their own resources to help, and we are a caring community and a caring society. And we do ensure, or want to ensure, that schools continue their work with pupils, provide toiletries within school facilities, and work to identify the pupils that are in need and need that help. The government is aware of the problems, and the problem, as we all know, until we come out of the European Union, is that we do have to pay the VAT, but on these products. But the VAT is redirected into women's charities, which bring, which does help, and the government are always trying to help, as we all should be. And so I think it's good that we've highlighted this, but I think a lot of work is being done that should be acknowledged and should be taken into account, that we are all aware of this problem. And so I beg to second the amendment. Thank you.
Thank you. Does any member wish to speak on the amendment? Councillor Rowley.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. First of all, I'd like to congratulate both Michael and Joe for moving and seconding this resolution. I think it's really topical and worthwhile and important, because it highlights, in the 5th or 6th richest country in the world, we've got people that are living in poverty. 30% of the population can't afford a week's holiday, can't afford food during the school holidays for their children. And Margaret says, isn't it great that charities and schools are providing sanitary protection during term time? I mean, I think it's absolutely fantastic that sort of something that is happening to women every day all over the country has to be remedied because they can't afford the right products by charity. I mean, it says everything, doesn't it? It says what a caring community we are, that we're not concerned about this. And what we're actually saying is that we should have volunteers fundraising to help these poor girls, instead of it being their right, their natural right, to have proper access to the right items at the right time without having to turn to charities. I think it's appalling. And I'm, again, amazed, Margaret, that you actually say the answer to everything is charities and fundraising and resolving this by having people having to go and beg and plead for something that is their natural right. It really is wrong that in this day and age we've got this situation, and I really think that it's great that we've brought it to the attention, and hopefully government will do something about it.
Thank you. Councillor Jones.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I must admit, I have to go back to a period of time when I was responsible for school budget, and the business manager was going through the school budget one year, and she actually came back to me and says, do we have to buy these because they're already in dispensers in the girls' toilets? And I said, what do you mean? Why do we have to buy them apart from... She says, because we need to provide them free when a girl requests it. And she looked at me and says, well, why can't they buy their own? So the original motions, in fact, the amendments, I can't go along with, because I know that schools, when they come down to making choices, they will not, if they can avoid it, give them away free, because they will put them in the machines. They're happy to do that, but they will not make them a point of entry. So it's down to individual teachers, like obviously Michael has made reference to. But the other issue as well is it does not take account of the number of girls who are missing school every month because of their periods, whether they're having serious problems with the pain, with heavy periods, or because they simply can't afford it. And it's also, the amendment does not address that point, that it's acting as a block to girls attending school. And obviously, as Councillor Ahmed and I both know, when you count up the number of days that are lost each year, the impact on learning at the end of the GCSE period is significant. So we have to be in a position whereby we have got to remove any problems whatsoever that can inhibit girls from going to school. And I think I'm also glad that obviously Michael actually identified a group of ladies when he referred to the Red Box project, which started in Portsmouth last year, whereby it was a group of ladies who felt very concerned about this as a problem. And they, just in 12 months, that project is now operating between Cornwall up to Scotland. In this region, there's Bradford, Calderdale, Mirfield, Heckman White, Cleckheaton and Gomersall are operating that. And it would be rather nice to think that, in fact, Wakefield could also become part of that project. So I'm afraid I can't support the amendment, so I'll support the motion. Thank you, Mr Mayor.
Thank you. Councillor Wassell.
I've got a similar dilemma, Mr Mayor, with the amendment. It seems to detract from the original motion rather than add anything to it. I'm one of these charitable workers that's been raising monies for sanitary products for over 30 years. I started in the miners' strike. I got a rude awakening when I was asking for tins of beans and somebody gave me some tampons, and I thought, what use are they going to be? But, you know, I did realise eventually that there is a need other than food at food banks, and as a food bank supporter and volunteer, we do give many sanitary products out on a weekly basis. We supply, via other colleagues in this room, Pinderfields Hospital long-stay patients, or patients that have gone in under exceptional circumstances, with cosmetic, I can't think of a proper word, toiletries, sorry, yeah, and comfort pads. So incontinence, period pain, etc., as one of those people that's been raising money for a great number of years. And again, this is great. You're at school, you can have a free one. Well, they're on holiday, and they'll be coming to me next week, Monday for something to eat, Wednesday for something to eat, and if they want any products, they'll be more than welcome to them as well, because we've got a brunch club running next week for kids that aren't in school, and they're not under 4, 5, 6 or whatever. It's kids, full stop, and some of them will have this need, and we will try our best to accommodate their requests. And they can't wait to go back to school. Periods don't stop in 6-week holidays. I'm sorry, I don't think saying schools are doing it already, and it's not a new thing. It's not a new thing. You can go back to Adam and Eve when they use the lever if you want, but, you know, it's not a new thing. It's ongoing. It's not just because of the current austerity either, before we say not to use the A word again. It's an ongoing challenge that people have been facing for a great number of years. I've been trying to help them with that challenge for over 30 plus years as a man.
Thank you. Councillor Tennant-King.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. First of all, well done to Councillor Graham for bringing this to our attention and giving us the opportunity to debate, which to some is an embarrassing and delicate subject. Not only not being able to afford sanitary products and having to use substitutes, such as socks, etc., it's the detrimental effect it has on the female's well-being and mental health. Many young girls are already embarrassed about starting their menstrual cycle in the first place without having the extra burden of cost or not having the sanitary protection to suit their needs. It must be degrading to them to continually have to explain as to why they cannot come to school or even work. And bearing in mind there may be several females in one household, adding to the burden of the cost. So therefore, I support Councillor Michael Graham's motion, but I'm against the additional one. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Harvey.
I just want to say a big thank you to Councillor Graham and Councillor Hepworth to bring this issue to the forefront of this council. So I do understand that there are poverty issues across the country in this what we call period poverty. So what I like to highlight is, are we really addressing this issue as a nationwide issue? So as International UK has the report as 1 in 10. So 1 in 10 has expressed the problem once at least in their lifetime or before they're 21 to say that they need to borrow some product or they cannot afford it. But locally, I have done some research in my school and others, and we have not recorded any children has not been able to get to school due to the problem with sanitary products they have not got access to. That's for certain. So what I want to ask the Chamber is now, this is a Labour Council of 45 years. Okay, since 1973. You're telling me we have not yet eradicated period poverty yet? Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Councillor Tully.
I don't intend to say anything on this because it's no term, no broom, sell little. The M2 resolution talks at both paragraphs about the inadequate sanitary protection and calls on the government to look to ways of making it available here. I'm not sure where the amendment takes us because at my school we have to take our own bog roll in, we take our own pencils in, we're taking his own paper in, we're taking his own crayons in, you know. And we're 5th richest nation in country. And we've got a situation here but the best they can come up with is an amendment that ensures schools continue to work with their pupils to provide toiletries. They should be there. They should be there as part and parcel of these young people, young children going to school to say. Not wondering whether somebody might be able to borrow me one or lend me one or stay away from school. The amendment is nothing other than distracts away from which I think is a fabulous, thought-through resolution which a lot of work has gone into, and I would have thought when the Leader of the Opposition first got to his feet, I would actually expect to say, well, we're going to withdraw our amendment because it's totally irrelevant. It is totally irrelevant to what is written in this resolution. Total waste of time. Support this resolution. We are not here to keep making excuses for a government that has absolutely took money away from education and from all aspects of public services in the last 10 years in this country. So stop trying to suggest when you bring your toilet rolls in, you bring your pencils in, you bring your rubbers in, you bring something else in, you bring some tampons in as well. It should be provided. It should be provided by right. Women have no choice other than to do what they have to do on a monthly cycle. And that is a fact of life. And to start to play with this situation, well, school could provide, it's impossible. The resolution covers it quite clearly. It's a good, well thought out resolution. And I ask this council again to reject the amendment and treat it with the contempt it deserves and support the resolution put forward by my comrade in front of me. Thank you.
Are there any other speakers on the amendment? If not, Councillor Graham, as mover of the original motion, do you wish to reply? Councillor Graham, as mover of the original motion, do you wish to reply? In exercising your right of reply, may I remind you that no new matter can be introduced.
Yes, please, Mr. Mayor, I'd like to speak. So I'd just like to thank everyone who has spoken today, and just want to pick up on a few of the issues. But before I say that, the main purpose of this motion is to call on the government to do more research. The research that's already been done has not been... The research that's already been done has not been in-depth enough, and it's only looked at absence. Even if some girls experiencing period poverty have great school attendance, does that still make period poverty okay? No, it doesn't. When it comes to the motion, I cannot support that. Although I acknowledge that some schools across the country and across the Wakefield district are providing sanitary products and have done in the past, it's definitely not common practice amongst all of them. I appreciate Councillor Ahmed has worked in schools, I have too, and out of the 3 schools I've worked in the past decade, only one of them has actually provided those. Picking up on what Councillor Hepworth said, this is being pushed out in Scotland that they are providing in every school, college, university, free sanitary products, but also to women as well, to women from low-income households. Councillor Tennant-King picked up on something really important. There's a huge stigma surrounding period poverty, and girls don't want to come forward and talk about it. They feel ashamed. I think it's 1 in 5 girls feel comfortable talking to a teacher, and the rest don't. So I wish Councillor Harvey would have listened to that when she's talking about no reports being found in her school. Well, that might be the reason why people are not forthcoming with this. There's huge embarrassment. And it's also pained me to see members of the public on Facebook, when this was reported on by Wakefield Express, coming out with comments such as, the girls should get a job. 11-year-old schoolgirls should get a job to pay for their sanitary products. Tissue will do. Why can't they use tissue? I use tissue. And these girls stay off school for any excuse. To finish off, period poverty is a very real problem. It does exist, and we must not forget that it's not just about the girls in school, it is about women across the country. And however inexpensive some brands of sanitary products are, no matter what situation women and girls find them in financially, the point is one of equality. Why should women and girls already struggling in poverty end up with less disposable income just because they bleed? With that, I ask colleagues not to support the amendment, but to support the original motion as tabled.
Thank you. We will now take the amendment to the vote. To clarify this is to determine whether the amendment from Councillor Hammond should become the new substantive motion. Please show all those in favour of the amendment. Please show all those against the amendment. Any abstentions? The amendment fails. And now we revert back to the original motion as set out in the agenda. The debate on the amendment has covered many points. However, does any member wish to speak on the original motion? May I remind members that speeches must be directed to the question under discussion or to a personal explanation or point of order. No speech may exceed 5 minutes. Councillor Graham, as mover of the motion, you have the right of reply.
May I just
In exercising your right of reply, may I remind you that no new matter can be introduced.
May I just like to say one last thing as the right to reply. It's that Councillor Ahmed quite rightly said that he supports every part of the original motion, and I'm hoping that now that the amendment has failed, he will still be voting in favour of it. Thank you.
Thank you. Please show all those in favour of the motion. Huh? Please show all those against the motion. Any abstentions? That is carried. That is carried. The second motion is from Councillor Hammond. Would you please move your motion to council?
Speaking on the motion, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I think in the members' diary book we should have a definition log for people to understand what a motion is and what an amendment is. But it's that's fine. Let's move on to this one now. So in proposing the motion, I would add that alongside many other city centres, Wakefield has suffered a decline in footfall. Now, obviously, this has resulted in many empty shops in the city, and we all know that shopping habits have changed over the last few years. That's factual, that's not going to change. And I don't hold... Sorry? We'll wait for you to join Karl Marx one day and overthrow it then, But until then, we'll deal with the system.
Excuse me, can you please talk through the chair, both councillors?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So that is, whether we agree with it or not, whether it's capitalism or not, we all in here in this chamber, and I'm sure you do as well, we all shop online, and we've mentioned it here before, and that's not going to change. That's something Amazon, everything, eBay, everything like that has resulted in decline in the city centre. But if we look, and I've spoken to Simi Sekon here, who's done a work in Little Germany, and was looking to do some work in Wakefield, but I think they are holding back at the moment. We can see many examples where some of that decline has been changed, altered, and we're realising that the city centres are changing. And I think Leeds is slightly different because it attracts more publicity than we do as a city close to Leeds. If we look at Dewsbury, and if we look at Leeds market itself, and we could see a thriving market inside the city centre, and it is running well. It is. I've been there a number of times. So that's why we go through the chair, don't we? So you've got an obvious opportunity to do that. Dewsbury Market, if you go and if you ask for a stall, you can see the waiting list actually on there as well. Leeds have altered and accommodated their market and has suffered a decline, still has a footfall going through, and so does Bradford as well. And Wakefield once had a thriving market which attracted people from many different parts of the district within the last 20 years, and as Councillor Sanders will speak, he'll speak on experience of actually working there as well. But sadly, due to many different reasons, a number of different reasons, there's a decline. And I've looked online, and Wakefield Express shared this article, and there's been a significant number of people from our residents that have supported the idea of creating an indoor market within the town. Now, obviously, there's a process that we have to go through that, identify a building, and all the aspects that are in there. But this is there was no attempt to undermine what the council has done in this work. There was nothing. I recognise actually the work that the council has done in trying to bring the city centre back alive. But I think we have to look at the future by looking at some examples from the past as well, but look at the future. That internet shopping is not going to go down. It's not, shopping habits are not going to change. And some of the things that John Lewis and all them are actually, they just shop fronts. Most people go there and buy online. That's the new world that we live in. So we have to recognise that and try to encourage people back into the city centre, and certain things that do happen in the city centre encourage that. And this motion is an attempt by the Conservative group to raise that issue and hopefully have a discussion about it and agree a way forward on this. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Ahmed. Is the motion seconded? Thank you, Councillor Sanders. Do you wish to formally speak now or reserve your right to speak until later in the debate?
I'll speak now, Mr. Mayor. Mr. Mayor, in seconding the motion, I speak with experience as a former market trader. Wakefield has a long and proud heritage for its market, which dates back to the 16th century. We all appreciate that most town and city centres are struggling to compete in an era of increased competition from online shopping and shoppers continually changing their shopping habits. Markets can still play an important part in that contemporary shopping experience if the right business model and right leadership is put into place to drive that vision to achieve that positive outcome for shoppers. People love markets for so many reasons, and the experience is always one that tops the poll in surveys. As well as meeting people, the impromptu conversations, as well as the unexpected sensory delights, are what drags people back to the market time and time again. But these qualities of spontaneity and sociability don't just happen by chance. A great market must be carefully and meticulously planned from the outset, with the right mix of stalls that would attract all different types of shoppers across all demographics and be fully inclusive. There are many innovations that have proved very successful in public markets, like connecting with local farmers and local producers, adding public seating and building a sense of community. Location is also paramount to success with good visibility, accessibility, with good footfall, with the space being easy for shoppers to navigate their way around the stalls, and well-managed parking and being close to nearby amenities. This motion tasks officers with looking at alternative locations which could provide a more attractive and successful market for Wakefield. It merely stimulates the debate on the matter without committing the council. We would await officers' recommendations before deciding how to best proceed. We further note the Cabinet's actions to review the state of the High Street, and we also recommend that report in due course. We hope to have the support of the council today as we in the Conservative group stand up to defend Wakefield's proud and historic market. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Councillor Box has submitted an amendment to the motion. The amendment has been circulated to members prior to the meeting. Councillor Box, would you please introduce your amendment?
Yeah, I'll be brief, Mr. Mayor. Just to set the record straight in terms of the resolution, it actually cost the council nothing for the Newmarket Hall. We had it paid for, so there was actually no cost to the council. In the final bit of the amendment, it talks about the Grimley report. It should say Grimsey. It's Grimsey's report, not Grimley's. What he actually said was this. I'll read out verbatim what he said. Forget retail for town centres. They need to become community hubs based on health, education, entertainment, leisure and arts and crafts. That's his considered view. The problem with the resolution actually is that it's piecemeal. You can't look at markets in isolation. I know there is a lot of support for markets, no one denies that. But we've got to look at this in the whole. What's the future? And I thought I had mentioned it at council actually, that what we're asking officers to do already is to carry out a review of our town centres. And I think that's the appropriate way to go. One of the things that the report says is which council should create town centre commissions. My view, and I've told officer colleagues this, is that we perhaps should use towns teams, because that worked very well in Pontefract and Castleford all those years ago when we had some of the regeneration through the RDA. And I'll just finish on this point, that I was talking to some young people in Huddersfield today, and I said one of the few things about getting older is that you get a sense of perspective. And if you look at how the high street has changed, I mean, you know, we had Woolworths, that's just gone. Woolworths has gone. Pound World, who would have thought that Pound World would be in trouble, but that's gone. We've lost jobs, particularly in Wakefield and Normanton. Maplin's gone. Toys R Us, they're just falling like ninepins. Marks and Spencer's House of Fraser and Carphone Warehouse have all closed stores. So that's the situation that we face. And again, I'm not one to overly burden you with statistics, but just one or two from the report. The UK has got an oversupply of shops, as Councillor Ahmed said, currently 10%, and forecast to rise to 20%. That's about 100,000 shops we're going to close. And retail internet sales are now at 18% of all retail sales, and are likely to grow to 30% by 2030. Footfall in town centres has decreased every year since 2013, and in the last 10 years has fallen by 17%. And it's saying that the fundamental structure of Britain's town centres has changed from goods transactions to one of consumption of food and experiential services, including health and beauty. And it also predicts that by 2035, there'll be 50% less out-of-town retail parks. So we face huge challenges in the future. So the point I'm making in the amendment is to say that you simply can't say, let's have a new market, because what we have to do if we're going to be successful in the future is to be ahead of the game. So I agree entirely that opposite colleagues should look at this. We'd already commissioned a piece of work from them. But, you know, we can look at the future of town, the market. I know some comment has been made apparently online about could you use the old store. Sorry? Yeah, Denise said no. Well, she's on speed dial for all the shops in Wakefield. We have looked at that actually, but the cost is prohibitive. A lot of asbestos there, a lot of repairs needed, and the person who owns it is wanting a lot of money plus those repairs. At the moment, it makes it not economically viable. So, hopefully, you'll accept the amendment. I think it is trying to help look at a bigger picture rather than simply the market. But I accept that the market should be part of that.
Thank you. Is the amendment seconded? Thank you, Councillor. Mrs. Jeffrey, do you wish to formally speak now or reserve your right to speak until later in the debate?
There's not a lot to say really, except to say, yes, people do love markets, and it's a pity that they actually don't use them as much as they say they want to. Otherwise, we would have perhaps had more of a success. But we need to now work together, all of us, to work on the plan to revitalise our town centres, and markets is just a part of that. Officers have been working hard to try and support this. We've subsidised the market for years, and we need to look at it with a fresh approach. So I would urge you all to vote for the amendment.
Does any member wish to speak on the amendment? Olivia?
Do you know, Mr. Mayor, if I wasn't a suspicious person, I'd actually think that this was just cheap publicity, because we built this new market in 2008, and right from the start it had a few problems, but it had the proximity to a car park, it had the proximity to the bus station, and therefore all the things that have been referred to would actually be a winner. Right from the start, because of the setbacks, we had subsidy. And never once in those years in between have the opposition actually questioned the subsidy or questioned the viability. And now, when it's at the point where we have, I believe, exhausted every aspect of this building, we now have this resolution, this cheap resolution, suggesting that we should continue and abandon the building we've got and find another building and look at that viability of it. What other building in Wakefield is so close to a car park, so close to the bus station, and yet can't remain viable? I really do think that this is just cheap publicity, and that in fact if you've been looking at the budget for the past 10 years, you would have seen that markets are a problem. I congratulate the staff that have been looking and pursuing every aspect of trying to make this building viable, and I really do think that we've reached a stage where, you know, the shopping habits of all of us have changed so much, and the number of people that have spoken to me about how much they like the market, but when I've responded, do you ever use it, they say no. And so, I mean, it just is publicity for the sake of it, is this resolution.
Thank you. Councillor Tully.
I'm going to support the amendment for the simple reason is there wasn't a lot wrong in what the original resolution had said about footfall and nobody going to it. Because I come from a small place called Southampton that's got a market and it's dying on its backside, and it has been for the last god number of years because people's shopping habits have changed, and we have to take that into consideration. That's what people don't do markets any longer, and we tried 1,001 initiatives in my part of the world to try to bring more people and more stallholders into our market, and it's not been very successful because they do not use markets any longer. When I got married 40 years ago, it was a regular occurrence. You took your kids in the pushchair, you could go to the market, you could get everything that you wanted, from fish, meat, veg, clothes, knickers, toothpaste. I couldn't afford toothpaste, but you know where I'm coming from. There's nothing in these days, and people's shopping habits have changed. And why I'm concerned about I want to speak against the resolution, because it actually tries to suggest that it's all our fault, and we've wasted money on X, Y, Z. And we haven't. And there has got to be, as the leader has said in the amendment, an opportunity to look at this in the bigger picture and where we go from here and taking it forward. We have got a shopping situation where online, internet shopping, email, whatever they call it, it's not something I do, but I'm fully aware of it, is absolutely crucifying town centres and markets of space. We basically offered stalls in Southampton Market free and offer them a £5 to come and stand on them, and we still can't fill them because that's not what people do. So I would ask this council today to reject the resolution and support the amendment put forward and the work that's been done by this authority to try and improve the situation, and support the amendment moved by Councillor Watts.
Does any other member wish to speak on the amendment? Mrs Taylor.
Thank you. I'm afraid, Councillor Tully, I've got to totally contradict you. Ossett Market is a thriving market. People love shopping in Ossett Market. They come from far and wide, and they really love shopping in the market. You're totally, totally wrong.
Councillor Morley.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Mr Mayor, I speak as a former market trader, a former member of the Market Traders Federation, and somebody whose family have worked in markets for God knows how many years. As I've always said in this council chamber, my background is the travelling fairground industry. Very, very proud of that. But during the 90s, late 80s and 90s, that industry started taking a massive nosedive, and many members of that community and my family moved into markets, South Ensel Market, Pontefract Market, various different markets. We used to do a massive open air market. You'd never think it finished. Thousands locked there on a Sunday. It finished in 2013. When you look at what is happening on the High Street, and this is why I welcome the amendment, when you look at what is happening on the High Street now, it's not just single markets, it's not party political. When you go to North Lincolnshire, where my sister's business is, she runs a business in that town centre, they complain about the Conservative-led market, Conservative-led party over there, and how they're failing. It's not political, it's down to the way the economy is going and down to town centres are. I welcome what's happening, but we need to look at how retail's going to go in Wakefield City Centre. We need some investigation into there. The shopping habits are changing so much across this country now. Who would ever have thought that Wolves are shut? Who would ever think that House of Fraser would start looking at shutting department stores down? Mr Mayor, we need to have a fundamental look. Town centres are changing. It will be a place of education, coffee shops. Anyone that follows me on Facebook do know early evening entertainment around Wakefield, of clubs and bars and nice restaurants. We've got a growing economy actually in Wakefield. When you look at the early evening economy, the amount of fabulous restaurants that are opening, nice bars that are opening, the old Westgate run's getting shorter and shorter, for the better, I think. We're getting some nice people coming out in the early evening. So I welcome the amendment. Councillor Armour makes reference to how much Leigh City Market's thriving. Well, he wants to get into Leigh City Market. It's the shadow of its former self. I used to go there with my grandma in the 80s. There's a massive area in the middle of it now that's completely desolate. But they have as a venue area. because they can't fill the amount of stalls in that market. It grew and grew and grew, and it's too big for them now. Bradford Market, me and my partner went there in November, he's from Bradford. You could see how Bradford is a shadow of its former self. It was a ghost town, that market. Markets are changing. There's more need for some themed markets, event markets, open air markets outside, for the traditional market. People talk about how there was in the 80s, the 70s, the 50s, and God knows before that, but they've completely changed. It's a generational thing as well. My mum loves to go to a market. I never go in them. I don't have time to go in them. I want to go shopping at 8 o'clock at night. Places, it is a generational thing there. We need to have a full investigation of what's happening with our town and city centres, not just one area of it. I welcome the amendment, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Councillor Harvey.
Wakefield Market was built in 2008, 10 years ago, with £3 million of taxpayers' money.
Point of order, the council did not pay anything for that market.
Okay. So I want to make apology if this figure is not correct to the leader of the council. So, but however, we do know that last year alone, £193,000 was lost because of operation of this market. Okay. We also know that many people in Wakefield believe that from day one that market did not make money. Okay. So I would be able to request this set of data from the lovely officer behind me if I wanted. So what happened is now, we know that from day one, the food and meat section of that market has never been utilized because of drainage problem, okay? So they have not been. And why did we make the loss of the money? Because 5 years ago, the food hall has been set up, 12 occupier, small business, 1 team, and they did not even pay any rate at all because what arrangement the council has, I do not know, but they are not paying anything. So coming back to what got left in the marketplace, there are 49 at the best of height of the market operation, 49 occupants, okay, there. That's including outside market traders, okay. The management was poor from beginning to the end. At the moment now, there are still a few small businesses struggling to remain in the premises, has not been served Section 25 at all. And that's another 6 months once they have been served Section 25. So they do not know what to do at all. They try their best. And we are talking about these people have the market traders of 60 years of family tradition, and they wanted to carry on to work on a little bit of heritage they could pass on to their children, but they do not know. They also trying to actually send email to the members of this chamber, but has never got much of a reply, none whatsoever. But we were told the last consultation from the council is in 2016. They have not yet, at this moment of time, given the alternative side or have any accommodation at all that council actually should have come up with. So my question is, what is the commitment? Even Councillor Box saying that it is not viable at the moment to find the permanent site for them. What is the commitment do you have for the small businesses still left behind operating in difficulty? Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Councillor Rhodes.
Broken a bit. I'm suffering with this throat thing that's going round. But I'm sorry I can't sit and listen to this anymore. If I have to take 10 strips just to keep me going, I'm going to do it. I'm sat here and I'm thinking to myself, what planet have you been on for the last 10 years, or any of you? Don't you dare again tell us and teach us any lessons about the Market Hall of Wakefield as elected members for Wakefield and the members around the area. Do you not listen, or do you just write your script and have to stick to it? Listen to what's being said. The economy, the change, everything is changing. It hasn't cost a penny. I reiterate, take out your script. It hasn't cost a penny. But what has happened over the last years, and read the information that's out there, is that this council has subsidised to support all those in the market trade within the market house at a time when other businesses themselves have been suffering. And that subsidy continued over the years. And get your facts right about support for the people in there. The market traders in there, through their markets association, over the years, have had consultation, they've had regular meetings. Officers of this council over the years have actually been talking to them about supporting them to find other premises, and that is still ongoing. And where you're getting your information about that they're actually being lost and forgotten about, check that one out as well. And I'm sure Councillor Jeffrey is going to spare my voice and actually tell you a bit more about the history. And when you start writing notes to come to this council to stand up and actually berate this council for what it's been doing to help the market traders, and I was a market person, always have been. And when you start getting your facts right, lady, you can stand up and give the proper information instead of trying to make headlines again, as you're always trying to do. We are supportive of the traders. We have done everything we can, and we will continue to do that to support the people that are left, to keep and maintain them within the Wakefield district.
Thank you. Councillor Jeffrey.
Betsy said it all very adequately, and as a Wakefield member, she knows full well, and so do the rest of the Wakefield members, how we've really tried to keep this market going. It wasn't well done in the first place because the market traders themselves were struggling, and that's why we subsidise them, but we cannot go on any longer subsidising them. But for you to say that we haven't arranged to meet them, I've actually got a meeting next week with the market traders who are actually staying in the market at the moment. They've all been offered different venues to move to. They've all been offered compensation. Some of them don't want to move because they still hope that they can stay there. They cannot stay there, we need to move on. But there are meetings being held, market officers are meeting with them regularly, and I myself are meeting some of them next week to see what we can do for them.
Councillor Ahmed.
Bringing it back to the actual amendment, you know, and the things that were actually spoken about, Councillor Rowley, you know, etc., and Councillor Rhodes. The motion, if we read it, actually, the original motion and the amendments, there's not any berating of the market. And if you listen to what I actually said, it was acknowledging the changes in people's shopping habits on there. But in terms of publicity, if I seek publicity, what I suggest you do is take a copy of the Ofsted inspection, frame it, because that's your inspection. Okay. Okay. In terms of the amendment, I think it's right that we do look at the whole city centres in a holistic picture. I think the amendment does improve the overall motion rather than focus on the market itself. So that's why I would be happy to support the amendment and look at the outcome of that and see how and if there is a need for a market within Wakefield. I would always support the need for a market in Wakefield, despite shopping habit changes, etc. But I would say that the amendment, for me, is an acceptable amendment.
We will now take the amendment to the vote. To clarify this is to determine whether the amendment from Councillor Box should become the new substantive motion. Please show all those in favour of the amendment. Please show those against the amendment. Any abstentions? The amendment has now become the substantive motion, and we must now take the final vote on that substantive motion. However, before we do so, does any member wish to speak on the new substantive motion? No? Councillor Ahmed, as mover of the original motion, do you wish to speak? In exercising your right of reply, may I remind you that no new matter can be introduced.
Just like to say that obviously we spoke in terms of the motion was to raise the awareness of the city centre, and hopefully it's generated some debate and interest in the council as well, and those people that have engaged with it online as well have, you know, actually commit to coming into the city centre and making it a better place for everybody.
Can I just ask, on a point of order, as the amended resolution is now the substantive resolution, does that mean I get the final word? Because I'm just asking a question actually, because you can't have somebody speaking twice. That's what we've had.
Just a minute, Councillor Box, just a minute. You can.
If somebody's
They
speaking
can
twice,
speak
to
on the
wind up.
resolution and the amendment.
You can't then. You can. Well,
the proposer of the resolution speaks on the resolution and at the end of the debate.
I'm sorry to pursue the point, but it is important for future debates. Councillor Ahmed was allowed to speak twice at the end. Is that right? I mean, it may well be right, I don't know.
Councillor Hammond gets to speak on the amendment, on the motion, and he's the original proposer. Now then. No, we haven't finished. We haven't finished yet. Right then. Please show all those in favour of the motion. The new motion, the new substantive motion. Thank you. Please show those against the motion. Are there any abstentions? That is carried. That was the last item on the agenda. Thank you, colleagues, for your attendance. The next council meeting is on the 19th of September. I now declare the council meeting closed.